Good morning. I'm Rosalie Schaefer, and on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Manatee County, I welcome you to our program today. I'd like to recognize a public official in our audience, Karen Carpenter, who is a member of the Manatee County School Board. Today we will be talking about bullying. Bullying isn't child's play or ordinary teasing. It's persistent harassment that can cause serious physical and psychological damage to its victims. Here to educate us on this problem and what can be done about it are Skip Wilhoit, Coordinator of Safe Schools for Manatee County School District, and Shannon Summers of the PRISM Youth Initiative. Shannon? Okay. After their presentations, we will have questions from the audience. Please use the microphone for your question and state your name. And sometimes during the program, the speaker will ask you for questions. And that being the case, he will repeat back the question into the microphone so that it gets on the television tape. We have a brief film that depicts a victim of bullying.
We're the ones with the power to make a change. We're the ones who can make a difference. Because until there's public commitment and action to back that commitment, a policy is only words on paper. So I challenge you all to take a stand. Stop the violence. Be a friend. You don't know my name. You don't know anything about me. I've tried to play nice. I want to be in your game. The things that you say, you may think I never hear about them. But word travels fast, and I'm telling you to your face. I'm telling you behind your back. You don't know how it feels to be outside the crowd. You don't know what it's like to be left out. And you don't know how it feels to be your own best friend. On the outside looking in. Freak, weirdo, loser. The world would be a better place if you weren't alive. Yeah, why don't you just die, you miserable freak? Hey freak, wanna fight? Bet you won't do anything. Come on, fight back. And that's the last thing I remember. Next thing I know, I'm flat on my back. That's where this came from. But this stuff, it's nothing. Physical wounds will heal. I only have a few scars left from when the kids at school have kicked me or punched me. My hair grew back after I had to cut the gum out of it. And my gym clothes dried after a few of the cheerleaders threw them in the shower during gym. That's the kind of stuff that goes away. But you know what will never go away? My memories. I'll never forget being ignored by my classmates. I'll never forget the names they called me. The pokes, punches, and jabs, snide comments made in the hall or in the classroom, while some teachers and students stood and watched. Hate blogs on MySpace, rumors, mean jokes, and that sick feeling in the pit of my stomach every time I walk into school. There are few people who seem to understand the torment and loneliness associated with being a victim of bullying. But of those people, one person stands out among all the rest. His name is Dr. Dan Olweus. He is a professor of psychology at the University of Bergen in Norway. He has been called the world's leading authority on bullying and victimization. But what does this have to do with innovation in history? And why is Dr. Olweus considered a great innovator by so many people? Let me explain. As reported by the New York Times, the pioneer researcher Dr. Dan Olweus has studied bullying since the 1970s. He found the problem widespread in his country and has since then debunked myths like the ones that bullies have low self-esteem. He also uncovered a hierarchy in bulliedom, with henchmen following lead bullies. He also places focus on the largest group of children, the bystanders. According to Dr. Robert Siege, chief of ambulatory pediatrics at the Boston Medical Center, Olweus' genius is that he manages to turn the school situation around so that the kids realize that the bully is someone with a problem managing his or her behavior, and the victim is someone they can protect. Olweus has written a number of books on the subject of bullying, including Aggression in Schools, Bullies and Whipping Boys, first published in the US in 1978. It outlines his initial research. His 1993 book, Bullying at School, What We Know and What We Can Do, has been translated into more than 15 different languages. Olweus has also won a number of awards in recognition for his intervention work, including the Distinguished Contribution to Public Policy for Children Award from the Society for Research in Child Development. Now, where would we be without this research? Olweus gives us an idea in an excerpt from a European magazine article. The article states, "For 2 years, Johnny, a quiet 13-year-old boy, was made a human plaything by some of his classmates. The teenagers badgered Johnny for money, forced him to drink milk laced with detergents, and beat him up in the restrooms. They forced him to eat weeds and tied a string around his neck, leading him around like a dog. When interrogated about the bullying, his tormentors said that they pursued their victim because it was fun. For fun? Unbelievable. But guess what? He wasn't the only one." This is Brandon. He was bullied by his peers from the time he entered school in kindergarten to the time he was a senior in high school. His peers went out of their way to make Brandon miserable, and even went so far as to accuse him of planting a bomb at the school. Nobody believed his side of the story, and for the rest of the year, he was treated like a felon by teachers and students alike. By the time the faculty had admitted their mistake, it was too late. The damage had already been done. At the age of 18, Brandon put a loaded gun to his head and pulled the trigger. He became a victim of bullycide. Now tell me, is this the kind of environment you would feel comfortable sending your child into? Would you yourself enjoy attending school if that was what you had to look forward to every day? Granted, bullying among school children is an old phenomenon, but it wasn't until the 1970s that Olweus made it the object of systematic research, which means that until the 1980s, there was very little research published on the subject of bullying. And it wasn't until the 1990s that research was conducted in the United States. Olweus' initial anti-bullying program, spanning from 1983 to 1985, was tested on more than 2,500 students in Bergen, Norway. Within just 2 years, instances of school bullying had dropped by more than 50%. In addition to that, drinking, fighting, truancy, and vandalism rates were greatly reduced. And the social climate of the classroom greatly improved, resulting in a better learning environment for all students. Since then, Ulvaeus's program has been used in countries like the US, the UK, the Netherlands, and Japan. Moreover, the public opinion has changed. Bullying is now considered a serious school issue, and in Manatee County schools, we have adopted a zero-tolerance policy. Now, if you still wonder if Ulvaeus was innovative, and if you still wonder if schools can benefit from a bullying prevention program, consider this. A poem by a boy named Vijay Singh. He writes, "I shall forever remember and never forget. Monday, my money was taken. Tuesday, names called. Wednesday, my uniform torn. Thursday, my body pouring with blood. Friday, it's ended. Saturday, freedom." Note that this was the final entry in his journal. Vijay Singh's lifeless body was found hanging from a banister rail in his home on Sunday. He was mercilessly bullied by peers at school, and he took his own life to escape the bullying. Oh, and did I mention? He was 13 years old when he died. Sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can hurt too. Every year, 77% of America's children are bullied at school. 14% of those children have severe reactions to the abuse, and 90% of students 4th through 8th grade report being victims of bullying. But what do the numbers mean? How many kids are really being bullied? Let's put it this way. Every month, 1 in 4 kids will be the victim of school bullying, and every day, 160,000 children will skip school out of fear of bullying. Statistics say that every 7 minutes, a child is the victim of abuse while at school. But what if we could change what the experts say? What if we, kids, educators, and parents, could change the statistics? We're the ones with the power to make a change. We're the ones who can stop the violence. Because until there's a public commitment and an action to back that commitment, a policy is only words on paper. So I challenge you all to take a stand. Stop the violence. Be a friend.
And that was Angie Barnard again. And Angie, we're real proud of Angie. She's a student at Manatee High School. She won an award for a History Fair project. She featured Dr. Ulvaeus' work on that. And she's done quite a few different shows. She's actually developed plays at Manatee High School along with some of her peers. And she's been on METV several times to talk about bullying. And we need more of our students to have that same type of passion as Angie does, and we won't have the problem or nearly the scope of the problem that currently exists. And what I just handed out to everybody out there, you'll notice that the title of your paper either says elementary, middle, or high school bullying data or surveys on there. And we survey all of our students across the district, and we have for several years. So as I speak, you guys can look at the different data up there, and maybe you'll have some questions about it at the end when we go over questions. But before we go on, I think it's important that we talk about bullying and really get on the same page as to what bullying is. So I'm going to do something right now that I do with our little critters in elementary school when I go out there and I talk about bullying. And I'm going to ask you guys, what are some things that a bully does? And maybe this will give us a good idea of the different things that bullies do, which will constitute the definition of bullying. So what are some things that you guys know that a bully might do? We heard Angie speak of a few things. Calling you names. If you look at that data on that sheet in front of you, you'll see that name calling is by and large the most prevalent form of bullying that exists in our schools. Upwards to 70% of our students are victimized. And I always say to kids, you know, it might be, you know, you look at being called names as not that big of a deal. But what I like to remind them is we've all stubbed our toe, we've all banged our elbow before. And that physical pain, it goes away after 5 minutes or so. But you try showing up to school every day and be called names, put down, feel belittled. and ask yourself, how long does that pain last? You know, and when it goes on every single day, it's some of the worst pain that we can experience, especially as a kid, when fitting in socially is one of the most important things in our life. Teasing and name-calling is the most prevalent form of bullying. What else might a bully do? Take that money. Even though a lot of our kids don't even have lunch money nowadays, that's one of the most common responses. They steal things. You know, it's not just lunch money. It could be their possessions. And oftentimes, bullies don't even want these possessions for themselves. They don't even want to use them. They just want to inflict terror upon the student who has those possessions. So actually taking them is a form of emotional terrorism. What else might they do? Intimidation. Threat and intimidation is the favorite weapon of a bully. While calling names might be the most prevalent form, they love to threaten, they love to intimidate, they love to show their power. And when we talk about power, this is an important key definition or a key term in the definition of bullying that you have to look at. Because without the absence of power, there has to be an imbalance of power existing between the bully and those who they pick on. And that power can come from a variety of different sources. It could be size. The bully's bigger, stronger, as we might traditionally think of a bully. But it also could be social status. We could be talking about a more popular student, and because of that popularity, they feel that they are better or entitled to do whatever they want to other students. That source of power can come through numbers. There could be 4 or 5 other students. And as you may have heard Angie talk about the henchmen, that hierarchy identified by Dr. Olveus in bullying, there's usually one central bully, and that bully is pretty good at getting 4 or 5 other students to do their dirty work for them, and that's who we refer to as the henchmen. And oftentimes those 4 or 5 students will gang up on a student, thus creating another imbalance of power, one against many. So as you can see, bullies get their base of power from a variety of different sources, but it has to be there in order to formulate that definition of bullying. Otherwise, it's just another form of peer conflict. Okay, so that bullying, or the power, is definitely a key component. What else does a bully do? The teasing, and we would probably group that along with the name calling, but teasing and name calling are a little bit separate. So indeed, it would fall under that same guise. We get back to that emotional pain and the different ways that bullies can hurt. Well, we've got the emotional pain covered through the threat and intimidation, through the theft of your possessions, and also through the name calling and the teasing. And then we can get to the physical pain. You know, we can talk about the shoving into lockers or into walls. We can talk about the hitting, the punching, the kicking. Anytime that hands are laid on, bullies do intend to cause physical harm when they do that, but again, it goes back to that emotional pain. You know, they want you to be afraid the next time you see them coming down the hallway, when you know that they're going to be in the next class or waiting for you by the bus when the school bell rings. So it's that emotional harm. It all goes back to that. It's not just the physical, even when physical acts are committed. And then we have the social aspect of bullying, how they can also be hurt socially. And some people may not be familiar with this aspect, but if you think about the rumors, especially in this day and age, if you walk into any elementary school, you'll see that 50%, upwards of 50% of the kids in a 3rd or 4th grade class typically have a Facebook account. That's pretty incredible. And for you guys that aren't hip and familiar with what Facebook might be, it's social networking. And our kids, our children in this day and age, even as young as 7, 8, 9 years old, they go online to social networking sites, or they text message each other. And on those sites and in those text messages, you see a wide range of different things being said to our students in those schools. So we see the creation of rumors that are being spread like wildfire throughout a school, and it can even start on a weekend from somebody's bedroom. So that's the power of social networking, the power of technology. We've actually written it into our policy, which took effect in November of 2008. And this is not something you'll see in many other school districts across the state. We feel so strongly about this that we wanted to write specific language into our policy that makes sure that we cover and protect our students from that type of cyberbullying that transpires in text messages on social networking sites. So it doesn't matter where a kid begins talking smack about other students, where it begins the rumor spreading online. If you do it from the comfort of your own living room, as long as it impacts students in our school district, we can and we will take action. So we've written that into our policy to help protect our students from that. So you see that, really, to recap the different ways that our students are harmed, it goes the social bullying, where students, it's harder to make friends, harder to keep friends because people are leaving you out of activities, ostracizing you, they're spreading rumors about you. The physical pain that comes along with those physical attacks that we mentioned. And then, of course, the emotional pain, which all of it goes back to causing emotional pain on the victims. And that's what bullies really seek to do. I always call them little emotional terrorists. Regardless if it's one, regardless if it's many, that's their ultimate goal, is to terrorize and plant that seed in the minds of the students that they do target. And Angie also said something else about the way that bullies feel. they always put the blame back on the victim. In her presentation, she said it was fun. They did it because they felt it was fun, they enjoyed doing it. The hallmark of bullying, when we ask our investigators to look into it, is that lack of empathy, blaming the victim. They found joy in it. They either blame the victim for doing things in their own behavior that welcome that type of response from the bully, or they have no care, no concern, or no feelings towards that bully whatsoever, or that victim whatsoever. So when we ask our investigators, which are traditionally school administrators, school resource officers, these are the ones who primarily investigate bullying situations in our school sites. We ask them to look for those two elements to make sure that this is bullying before you move on. And those two elements, again, are going to be that imbalance of power. Somebody's got more power than the other person. That has to be there for it to be bullying. And that second component that we look at, there's got to be a willful intent to cause harm. And that's that lack of empathy for the victim and for those who are targeted by bullying. So those two elements have to be present. And if you look at Dr. Olveus' work, if you looked at most national work on bullying around the country, or indeed around the world, you'll see there's a third component. We don't put that in there as being necessary for an act to be considered bullying. And that third component is a repeated nature of the behavior, where it happens over and over and over again. But I guarantee you, you do your investigation, you look into the situation, call down witnesses, and ask what's taken place, you will find that almost all bullying, by the time it reaches the attention of an adult, it's been happening for quite some time, either with that bully with other victims or that victim repeatedly with that same bully. So that third additional criteria to meet the definition of bullying, a repeated pattern of behavior, it'll be there, but it's not necessary for us to define an act as bullying. Because the first time a kid's shoved up against a locker, the first time a kid is made fun of in front of his peers or left out of games, it's still bullying. And we want to make sure that we apply the proper interventions and consequences for that act. So that's the definition of bullying. We've got some good examples, and you can see how it manifests. You can see how it does harm our students. And now we look at the scope of it. There's a data element out there that shows about 160,000 students every year stay home each day from school. I should say each year. This number, or the data was drawn from a specific year, but each day these students stay home from school out of fear of bullying. And because there's 55.5 million students in America in K through 12 schools, you can extrapolate that number and that data into our school district, where we have 42,000 students. In this district alone, if those numbers are correct, we have 124 students who stay home every day from school because they're afraid to go to school. They're afraid of the teasing, the name calling, the put downs, the threats, the intimidation, all those things that we just talked about that constitute bullying. They don't want to deal with it anymore. So you can see the impact that it has in our schools. And if you look at Dr. Olveus' work and any other national surveys, you'll see that between 17 and 28% of students are bullied annually at some point in that year. Well, our numbers show a little bit different picture. We've been surveying our students since 2006. Only since 2008, however, have our schools really joined this effort pretty much at every school site. And we owe a large debt not only to our school principals for this, but also our Director of Secondary and Elementary Education, who believes so strongly in this data that they encourage our schools to participate. And we've surveyed now over 15,000 students. We're still in the process of collecting data for this year. But you'll see right there in the reports that you have in front of you a synopsis of the past years that we've really been surveying our students. And if you look at the elementary level, just out of curiosity, some of you guys have already seen the data. Where do you think the most frequent bullying takes place? Are students at the elementary, middle, or high school bully more frequently? What do you think? Middle school and high school. One would think that. But if you were to look at the data and pass that around, some of you guys have middle school sheets, some of you guys have elementary, and some of you guys have high school. For anybody who's seen all three so far, you'll see that's not the case. High school students, the last year we surveyed them, 21.6 students, 21.6% of students said that they had been bullied at some point in the last year. Middle school, 23.3%. Elementary school, 43.9%. So you'll see it's almost twice as many in our elementary schools. It goes back to the teasing, it goes back to the name calling, the prevalence of it. And a lot of times our younger students feel a lot more impacted by that name calling, or they're more prone to calling names to other students in a mean and harmful way. And make no mistake about it, low-level name calling and teasing, it may not cross the border and the boundary into bullying. It may just be a case of students acting inappropriately, especially at a young age when they haven't really climbed up that ladder of moral development yet. But as we get into middle school and high school, we start to see the bullying change. It takes on a little bit more sinister face despite the fact that it happens at a decreased frequency. We start to see the threats, the intimidation, the ostracization take place more frequently. We start to see the physical bullying take place more frequently. And that happens in the middle school level, that happens in the high school level. And if you can look at the data, you'll get an idea of the types of bullying that take place at those levels. So when we look at the scope in Manatee County, despite our best efforts, it exceeds what the national averages say out there, between 17 and 28% of students involved annually. And because we've been bullying, and I believe that we probably have a greater grip on the scope of bullying in our school district than just about any other school district in this entire nation, because of the level of the surveys that we've been able to conduct over the last 5 years. And you'll see that we have some erratic results in terms of declining and increasing numbers. And a lot of that has to do with the focus that we provide in our schools for bullying prevention. Several years ago, we were in every school, speaking to the student bodies, telling them how to respond to bullying when it takes place, and empowering the bystanders who are so critical to giving a solution to this problem. Well, as academics starts to rule the day more and more, the time that we have for professional development, the time that we have to get into our classrooms and speak to our students, that goes away. And we don't have the ability to reach as many students. So that may be a responsible element for the increase in bullying that we see. But regardless, whatever we do, I don't think that we can do enough. This is something that we've got to be able to provide our students with a skill set to be able to resist bullying and not feed the bullies when they come and attack. You know, there's a right way to respond and a wrong way to respond, and we want our students to know the right way to respond to this, and that way it helps prevent them from being a victim in the future. But our bystanders are really the key. You know, they're the ones that have got to send the message to the bullies, that this is not acceptable behavior. So we've got to be able to empower them as well. And that's why I really do enjoy getting out into schools and giving the tools to the students so they can carry on that mission. But regardless, it's out there, and our schools are doing what they can in the face of academic accountability to battle this problem in our school system. But only when the Department of Education starts to build in school climate into our accountability models, that's when we'll see a real difference. Until then, all we look at is graduation rates in our high school and FCAT scores in our middle schools and elementary schools. Being a good school is far more than how your students do on FCAT. Being a good school is how well you do to produce good citizens for our society, your neighbors, my neighbors, and those who are going to carry on the torch here in Manatee County. We need to do a better job of educating the whole child, and Tallahassee needs to understand that and build school climate into its accountability models. That's when we'll start to see a real difference in these levels of bullying. And just to give you an idea, I don't want to hog up all the time. I'd like for Shannon to get down here and explain what she does, which is a critical service to our community. I want to talk a little bit about prevention and intervention and what we do in the school district. As I said, we adopted a new policy in November of 2008. And that was about the same time that every district in the state of Florida was required to produce a policy. And this was based on the Jeffrey Johnson Stand Up for All Students Act that was enacted into law in July of 2008. And ironically enough, the Jeffrey Johnson Stand Up for All Students Act, that was from Jeffrey Johnson. You heard the term bullycide in that presentation by Angie. For you guys that didn't understand what bullycide is, it's when a student takes their own life, when a child takes their own life because they just can't take it anymore. And when bullying is at the center of those feelings, we refer to it as bullycide. A colleague of ours down in Cape Coral, Debbie Johnston, lost her son in just that exact same fashion. And it was her passion that led to the Jeffrey Johnson Stand Up for All Students Act being passed after several years of traveling to Tallahassee with packs of kids, packs of educators from her community, from our community. One of her best friends, Ginny Marmo, is one of our school psychologists right here in our school district. And they traveled and traveled and traveled some more until it was finally passed into law. And Debbie was actually at one of our middle schools, Braden River Middle School, this past Friday, speaking to the students and staff out there about bullying and cyberbullying. So she's an advocate for this, as are a lot of different educators around the state. But it was the Jeffrey Johnson Stand Up for All Students Act which forced school districts around the state to adopt their own policies. And our policies were built on a model policy provided by Tallahassee, but we took it a little bit further, as I said, adding language to our students from cyberbullying in addition to the things that the state recommended for us. But within our policy and outside of our policy, there are certain programs that we feel are essential for prevention. And we look at bullying prevention on our school sites, there's a lot of things that can be done. Number one, build it into your curriculum. Talk about bullying. Make sure your students understand the rules that are involved with bullying. Make sure they understand the definitions, what constitutes bullying, and then the no tolerance policies that our schools have adopted. Make sure they understand where to report, who to report to. Our schools need to make sure that we have posters in visible areas of the school, in the cafeteria, in the hallway, in the main office, that show students where they can go report. They can report it anonymously if they don't feel comfortable going to any of the adults in their school. But we do survey our students, and they feel more comfortable about going to adults, face-to-face reporting, than they do on text messages, than they do on emails, than they do on any form of communication. So while we might think that we've got all these new technological advances that our kids are tied to, it's still old school, the preferable method to report, and that's going to an adult that they know and that they trust and that they like. So we've got to make sure that we establish those relationships for our students in every school. We've got to make sure that we empower our students. One of the great programs that we can create are tapping into the most socially influential students that we have in our schools and meeting with those students on a regular basis, training those students in how to intervene with their own peer groups so they can exact an influence over their friends. And if you get together the 20 most influential kids in any school and teach them how to properly intervene, and you can sell them on your message, you will reach every student in your school just through those 20. So that's why it's critical to tap into that social influence. And that's one of the great things that we can do as a school to help prevent. Another are the surveys that we conduct. Knowing exactly how many kids are victimized by bullying, knowing where it takes place, how it takes place, knowing the barriers and roadblocks for students to report, which are all included on our survey. A school has got to look at that data, and when they do look at that data, they'll understand exactly what they need to do or what they should do to better help stop what's going on in their hallways. And when we look at intervention, we've got to have an escalating system of consequences that's designed specifically for bullying. We can't apply in-school suspension or out-of-school suspension to every case of bullying and think that that's going to solve the issue. We've got to make sure that we have custom-designed interventions for our faculty to be able to utilize for students, whether that intervention is taking place in the classroom level, whether it's taking place in the office when an administrator finally brings it to their attention, when it's finally brought to an administrator's attention. We've got to be able to have different tools. I've built a bullying packet that our schools use where students sit down and they look at how their behaviors impacted other students. They had to do a little self-assessment to let them know, hey, you know what? You are a bully. And the things that you do have a negative impact on the other students. That's one of our lower level interventions that are available for every school in this district. We can take away privileges. We can isolate students from the activities that they enjoy. We can remove them from environments where they continue to bully other students. There's a lot of different things that we can do, and all those tools are available for our administrators, for our teachers, for our schools, and for our parents on the Safe Schools website for the Manatee County School District. And I'd like for you guys, anybody that's got a pen or a pencil and wants to write that down, we can turn you on to a wealth of different resources and materials that have been developed for our schools and for our parents and for our students to help combat this. That address is www.manateeschools.net/safe. So anybody that wants to go onto that website, you can look that up. And I would encourage any of you that are parents and have students in our schools, or anybody now watching this on METV, and you have students in our schools, children in our schools, please log on to that website and look at some of the resources that we've developed. It'll teach you not only what you need to teach your children to help them become less of a target or less of a viable target for bullying, but look at your own student to see if they're a bully, or maybe some of the warning signs to see if your child is being victimized without your knowledge. We need to understand that only 10% of bullying cases are ever brought to the attention of an adult. 10%. It's a clandestine behavior that operates in the shadows. That's why we have to survey our students. That's why we have to talk to our children. We have to create an open flow of communication with them so they feel comfortable coming to us and reporting when these things do happen. Because without it coming to our attention, it's going to keep on going. So we've got to make sure that we do those things to help out our students. So please log on to the website, get the information not only to help out your own children, but to better understand what the School District of Manatee County is undertaking to help stop bullying in our schools. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Shannon Summers, and I'm the Executive Director of a new agency called Prism Youth Initiative. We opened just over a year ago at Christmas break. We primarily serve, the term is LGBTQ, which stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender and questioning youth, ages 13 to 23. And we are on the forefront of the bullying issues here in Manatee County. Anytime we get a report, we encourage the student to follow the Manatee County procedures if they feel comfortable getting their parents involved. addressing it to someone at the school. If they're not comfortable doing it at the school level, I can always contact Skip, and we have an excellent relationship with the Manatee County Schools. Our agency, I was a teacher here in Manatee County, and I heard all of the "that's so gay" and "don't be gay" and "don't act gay," and I was stopping that in my school, at least in my classroom, my little area, wherever I could, or out in the halls. I was addressing that, and I found that students were coming out to me that they were lesbian or gay, or questioning. And my background is social work, but when I'm teaching, I'm a teacher. So I was referring them to the closest agency, which is down in Sarasota, and they said, "Ma'am, I'm hiding from my parents the way it is. I can't get on a bus and go down to Sarasota." So I saw the need for that kind of service here. Just at one small school, I saw how many kids really needed a place to go, just to get away from the bullying, just to have an adult who understood. And that's why we started PRISM. Some of the things that we do, we have a very active youth council. They conduct their own business meetings. They tell the adult board of directors what they want to see in the center and how they want things run, what the hours should be, what activities we should have. And I'm sorry, I should have introduced Aaron, who is our youth council president, and he wanted to share a story of bullying that happened here in Manatee County Schools. I'm also a teacher. I provide tutoring. We do peer counseling and support, and we're currently seeking funding to institute a formal counseling program for peers, where they're taught to, we're doing it now, but they're taught how to address each other's issues. And that's what we do at our roundtables. Because if one kid is being bullied, the other kid has probably gone through it. They know which adults at the school are more sympathetic, where they can get help, and how they dealt with it, which worked for them, and it might work over here. We also have a computer lab where they can do their homework or find other social resources, and we do HIV testing and prevention. That's one of our big missions, is to make sure that these kids who are at a higher risk don't contract this horrible disease, which is still out there, and there's still no cure, and they don't always know that. They think you take a pill and you're healthy, you're going to live forever. Well, no, you take 20 pills and you're still going to die early. We have a partnership with the Manatee County Health Department. They provide all of our supplies for us, and we also work with Manatee Children's Services. Last year we had 6 youth become homeless within 6 months. I was having one a month. I don't know if it's the economy, where maybe they had a contentious relationship at home and then it just got easier when they turned 18 to kick them out of the house. But we work with Manatee Children's Services, and we have a lot of success stories there. A couple of them are actually enrolled in college after they got our services. So I'll take questions at the end. I'm going to turn it over to Aaron.
So my name is Aaron. I'm the president of the Youth Council for PRISM.
Speak a little.
I wanted to talk today about my experiences in the school system and how I was bullied. For me, it started around 7th grade when I started realizing that all the normal boys were going off and having attraction toward female, and I wasn't. And because I was different, I was a very big target. And like the video was saying, the physical hurt goes away, but the mental jokes, the comments, the teasing, it stays with you. The bullying I went through led me to thoughts of suicide, mild drug addictions, and smoking cigarettes, all which I thankfully got through. The long-term effects were the worst for me. I had low self-confidence for the longest time, poor relationship skills with just friends, family. eating disorders, things like that. But then I found Prism, and a lot of things started getting easier. I started being able to go there and just be myself. And that was the biggest thing for me, is that I could go somewhere and be me. While I was at Prism, I had a problem with a bus driver while I was going to my high school, and she was basically taking the only 2 gay students on the bus, which were me and another young man, and moved us up front. And asking me, she separated the bus by gender, and she had asked me one day which side of the bus I would like to sit on. And from what I know about the situation, is she was removed immediately, and that was the last thing I've heard of it. So because of Prism, I was able to stop something that could have progressed into something bigger. In the last year that I've been with Prism, I have seen bullying stopped within the center. The strength and friendship that we have at the center is pretty amazing. Everyone gets educated on the HIV and the AIDS and the safe sex and all of that, and it's just a great thing. It really is. And that would be about it. I just want to thank you for having me and Shannon, and yeah.
Aaron left out the most important part. Since he's been coming to Prism, he is now enrolled at SCF, and he wants to be a social worker.
My name is Arlene Green, and I'm on the board of an organization called Embracing Our Differences. It's situated out of Sarasota, and it's become a worldwide organization. And the whole purpose of it is to, especially with children, get children to understand that we need to not tolerate but embrace diversity. I'm also a volunteer for something called Challenge Day, which is it's operated out of California. And I want to talk about these two things because I very much admire what you're trying to do, Mr. Wilhoit. But there's one major thing, so major, that's been left out, and that is enlightenment. We are not enlightened as adults to be able to show our hearts, this is going to sound strange right now, to the bullies. First of all, there's no such thing as a bully, okay? It's completely against, it's not in my vocabulary. There are children who do bad things, and their behavior is a bullied type behavior. But the children, and I've seen this time and time again, that are the quote-unquote bullies are the ones who need the most understanding and the most love and the most attention. And our focus is always going on how to protect the innocent, and I absolutely think that is necessary. But the only way we're going to stomp out bullying is if we let children, everyone know that they matter and they count. When I volunteer for Challenge Day, it's a one-day seminar. And kids come in, they don't know, well, now they're starting to know more about Challenge Day. It's getting to be better known nationally. Oprah Winfrey had this program on two of her shows, actually. But I've witnessed 5 or 6 different times, I've been doing this 5 or 6 different years now, these kids come in, they just think they're going to be out of school for a day, and they just think they're going to skip having to take tests or whatever they normally would do. And they come in with their typical bopping, you don't know me for nothing, but I'm going to come here because I'm going to get out of school today. Within 45 minutes, these kids are completely transformed. And the kids who are the bullies are beginning to realize that they have gotten bullied by probably most likely their own home backgrounds. And they, first of all, they need to be enlightened that they matter. But also, instead of judging these kids that we call bullies, we need to the only way we're going to stomp this out is if everybody knows, especially the bullies, who probably have not been given love at home, they've got to know that they matter. Freedom Riders. I don't know if anyone knows about Erin Brunell, I think her name is. She was a teacher in a very bad area in California. Her first year as a high school teacher. And she, these kids, it was a situation where if you were not in a clique, you were going to get beat up. I mean, it was very, very crime infested. And this woman took it upon herself to make these kids know that they mattered. And not only did they graduate from freshman year to sophomore year, which was unheard of at this time, because they knew somebody cared, the bullying stopped, the clique stopped, and these kids wound up graduating from high school. They went on to college. A lot of them went for masters, and now they've got the Freedom Riders Foundation, where they go around to schools all over the country explaining to everyone that they matter. Challenge Day was, I was going to say, by the end of that day, these kids, the bullies, were putting their arms around everybody else saying, man, I am so sorry. I didn't realize I was doing this. They got enlightened. But we have to get enlightened as adults also. There's not bullies. These are kids who need a hand. They need to be cared for. And that's my beef. I could be saying a whole lot more. It's a very passionate thing. Oh, one other thing. Embracing our differences. We focus on trying to educate children to embrace diversity of all kinds, not only culture, cultural, race, color. It's also emotional disability, sexual preference. We're trying to teach kids all over the world that we need to embrace diversity. And it's a great program out of Sarasota. We are looking now to bring that whole program to Bradenton. And we want to show, I don't have time. I want to give somebody else a chance to get up here. But all I will say is we get art pieces and quotations from all over the world. And it's all with that one theme. Out of 4,000 we got this year, we had to pick 39 of the best art pieces and quotations. The ones that are chosen, we blow them up into these huge billboard-sized pieces, and we put them for the month of March and April at Bayfront Park. And the energy is so great when everybody of all ages walk and see this wonderful art that is explaining and teaching everybody, especially kids, that we need to embrace diversity. That's where the emphasis has to start. So that's it. Sorry for taking up some time. Thank you.
Embracing our differences, they do a great job. They provide also free field trips for teachers. If anybody's listening is interested in taking their kids out there, Bayfront Park is out by Marina Jackson, Sarasota, and they every year put out a lot of nice different pieces of art to really hammer that home. But I'll just say this, everybody talks about diversity. I talk about unity. I'm not a big fan of looking at diversity and talking about diversity, embracing it. To me, that's common sense, but we need to focus more on what brings us together, what makes us the same, and I like to look at that aspect of it. But I appreciate any kind of effort which brings us all into that same conversation. And as far as the bullies, you're right. And I didn't have time to address everything up here, but one of the things that we talk about is bringing that bully into our fold. Because especially at a younger age, the younger these kids are, the more of a chance we've got to turn them around. And it's hard to explain to a lot of people, but what you see with bullying is leadership. It's just untapped, it's focused in the wrong area. But if you can turn those kids around, you've got a great ally to a lot of other kids in that school. So the younger they are, the easier it is. But it definitely is true. And those bullies are children who do need our help as well. So I agree.
My name is Myra Jones, and I'm an ex-educator, among other things. You were talking about the difference in power, and it's the more powerful person that becomes the bully. He bullies somebody who's less powerful. Seems to me like the most powerful entity in this whole equation is the school system itself. And I'd like to know what took you so long to recognize this as a problem. Why didn't you recognize it without help from somewhere else? Everybody who's ever taught knows it's a problem and something could be done about it. I'm going to answer my own question partly, and partly it's something that you referred to, that this is a problem that permeates society. Society gives the wrong messages to these kids in school, and bullying is rewarded in society in general. So we have to fight against that kind of thing. It's not weakness to differ in the way other people think. It's bravery. It takes a lot more courage to disagree with your peers than it does to take some kind of physical risk. But that's seen as weakness, not as courage. So we have a lot of rethinking to do, not just something that surrounds the bullying, but something that takes into the entire larger context where bullying is allowed, is even encouraged by some school people. I don't know about the ones in Manatee County, but it certainly was encouraged by some of the people where I taught. And so it's a big problem. It's a big problem that does need solving.
The first studies of bullying took place in the 1990s here in America. We didn't begin in Manatee County really until about 2003 to look at it for the first time. And in 2004, we developed committees and stuff like that. But you're right, it's always been looked at as a sense of weakness within schools. And I'll tell you right now, a large majority of adults, if you were to ask them 10 years ago, they believe it's a rite of passage. This is something that's going to make kids tougher. If they can live through it, they need to go through it. That's life. I think we've done a 180 since that time, and I think most adults are pretty much attuned to the problem of bullying. And definitely within our schools, you may find adults within our schools who actually employ bullying tactics themselves, using their base of power as a way to get what they want. But that's far and few between. I guarantee you that the vast majority of adults, educators within our school system are fully aware of the problem of bullying and will reach out to help students. I wish more would intervene when they overhear things taking place which could constitute bullying, but we are moving forward with this, and I'd like to think that Manatee County is a leader amongst public education institutions across this country.
And I'm a member of the Manatee Youth Commission, and I'm also the treasurer on the youth board at Prism Youth Initiative. I came into contact with the Manatee Youth Commission through Shannon, actually, and one of the goals of the Youth Commission is to get the youth voice to the leaders, the educators that are running the youth programs. And as a youth person, I find it very important that our voice gets out there, and I want to thank you for listening to it. And Shannon's doing a really great job running Prism Youth, and I can attest to that personally. I've come into bullying situations, and we at Prism Youth go to her, and she talks with us, and if it's a problem within Prism, she'll even talk to the bully, and we'll talk together, and she kind of counsels us, and it's a really great, she's doing a wonderful job. And I just wanted to thank the school board as well. So thank you for all you're doing.
Jeff, let me just say that whoever it was that inspired you to join the Manatee Youth Commission and take an active leadership role, they need to be thanked as well, so do you. It's only through expressing your voice and your concerns that we can make a difference. So thanks back to you, Matt.
I want to thank you both for the work you're doing with young people. I was bullied as a child in the 5th grade, and some decades later, I still remember that, and it is still very painful. To this day, I will get bullied by, primarily it's on a gender basis, men who feel they have more power that try to intimidate me. And that is still going on in our society, and so it's no wonder that young people replicate this activity in the schools. I would like to ask you about the enlightenment that Arlene talked about. The schools can do some things. Nonprofit organizations and youth councils like Jeff and Tori are involved in can do others, but we need to look at what's going on in the homes. And I wondered if you could talk about any initiatives that you work with parents, or ways that through the student, the SACs, the student advisory councils that parents participate in, that you can get the message out to parents.
One of the things that we try to do is we try to deal with that long-term hurt, and we do have a licensed mental health counselor on our board of directors who does agree to see kids for free, and she will see parents too to work out issues that they're having. That's one of the ways we address it, and Valerie's in the audience. I can't thank her enough for all the services she provides to our kids. So that's one of the ways we do it. If kids are having issues with their parents, I encourage them to come in. I'm always available to work out issues there. I'm available to talk to the bullies if they want to come join. We're not just an LGBT center. I mean, we promote, you know, our allies and how we get along and our unity.
You know, Ms. Carpenter, you mentioned SACs and things like that. I think a lot of our schools are very involved in doing their own initiatives. We try to provide them with different options and activities. You know, I'll even go in there and speak to school advisory committees as well. But we've developed a lot of resources for parents. Sometimes it's difficult at the district level to reach those parents because there's so few opportunities where parents get together with the schools in a single environment. School advisory committee meetings, though, are one of those opportunities, and I have gone in there and spoke with those parents. But the resource is available, again, on our website at manateeschools.net/safe. That's where we've developed a lot of tools for parents, how to communicate with your kids, advice for dealing with schools, questioning about the bullying that's taking place or what programs are in our schools, to let parents know about what we're trying to do. So every opportunity I have to speak to the public, engage parents in this conversation, I take advantage of it. That's about all I can say to that. And we do try to engage parents as much as possible on any topic which impacts their kids.
How is that addressed? Are they referred for counseling to gain insight into perhaps the reasons that they're bullying? And again, you know, it all stems from low self-esteem. I mean, you wouldn't have to grab for that power if you had a good sense of yourself.
Well, you know, that's one of those myths that Dr. Olveus actually expunged, that bullies have a low sense of self-esteem. The vast majority of bullies have a high sense of self-esteem, a sense of entitlement that makes them believe that they can do whatever they want to whomever they want. There might be some cases of low self-esteem, but what we see there is a little bit different mechanic at play. Somebody talked about earlier about most bullies have been bullied themselves. That creates a dynamic known as the bully victim, and they've had basically their power stolen from them. It doesn't create a low sense of self-esteem. What they do in that case would go out and find somebody with less power than they have, and they bully them, and it does make them feel a little bit better. But by and large, you're talking about students and children who have a higher sense of self-esteem. And what we do is, when I mentioned the bullying packet that we do provide to our schools, a counselor sits down with the students who fill that out, and a counselor goes over the responses with those students. And if they sense any type of further intervention that's necessary with that counselor, they'll meet with them one-on-one. They'll put them in social skill development classes to maybe help them deal with their peers in a little bit more proactive or positive fashion, I should say. So there's a wide variety, and it funnels through our guidance counselors, social workers, and school psychologists when they're brought into the problem. So that would be, it's all done one-on-one or with social group instruction would be the answer to that question, I guess.
When push comes to shove, nothing else works, at what point do you call in law enforcement for assault charges?
Well, there's a clear delineation between things that students do which are law enforcement related and which are school administration related. And a lot of our law enforcement, our school resource officers at the middle school level, are the primary investigators of bullying situations. And if they believe that it's going to be a legal situation, they actually go get somebody else from in their organization. They don't conduct the investigation. Anytime that a school administrator thinks that it's going to involve law enforcement charges, we bring in law enforcement and they investigate that situation from a law enforcement perspective and not from a school-based perspective. But when there is a complaint of battery and it fits the legal definition of battery, we'll call in that law enforcement. So, but if there's an investigation that needs to be done on campus, primarily when it comes to bullying, that'll be done by outside law enforcement, not the school resource officer. But we'll call law enforcement when we feel it crosses into that world and into that realm. So.
My name is Rosemary Hall. I also was an educator. What do you do about bullying the teacher in the classroom? I've heard so often that first-year teachers enter a classroom full of very low-achieving children, middle school primarily, that create anarchy. I mean, take over the classroom. What resources does the teacher have under those circumstances? Is she on her own, or is he on his own?
Well, if you're talking about a teacher who is the bully, or is the bully, okay, that last part kind of threw me off, because that, a lot of times we get, I shouldn't say a lot of times, I have heard of teachers, the adults in schools, not necessarily teachers, being the ones who bully because of the power base. But if a teacher feels like they've been bullied by a student,
they take over. I mean, they contaminate the entire group.
Well, most teachers have, classroom tools, classroom management tools available that they know of, tools in their toolbox that they can minimize disruptive students in the classroom. And if a student's behavior escalates beyond that classroom level intervention, they'll write an office discipline referral. And the student's now sent down to the office, and the administrator will sit down with them. And if the student goes back and still commits any of these acts, that's why we have that escalating system of consequences. Pretty soon you won't be in that classroom. Pretty soon we'll have a place where you can receive your free and public education, and it won't be in that room. So, we do have that escalating system, but by and large, our teachers know exactly how to handle disruptive students.
I had an experience like that. I taught in Little Haiti in Miami, and I had a bully. He'd been held back. I'm tall, but he was taller than me, and he would just totally try to take over the classroom. And I was a science teacher. And I just latched on. One lesson I was giving, he was really good at force and motion. Force and motion when it comes to science. And, I just took him aside and I said, you're really good at this. And his response was, nobody ever told me I was good at anything. And I actually taught him, he was an 8th grader, I taught him how to read in science class. And if I was lecturing, after I brought him on board, it's like show the bullies that they're people too. Oh, he would stop other kids from trying to disrupt my class. He'd be, you need to be quiet, Miss Summers talking. And I actually had a flash drive stolen, and I went up to him, I says, I don't want to know who took my flash drive. I had all my lesson plans on it. I said, I just want it back tomorrow. Oh, next morning, I have my flash drive back. So I understand what you're saying. You do need to show the bullies that they have worth too.
My question is, as a member of the community, what can I do to help? And who can I write to in Tallahassee to help you get school climate written into their accountability model? Because I think that's a great idea.
I don't know what can change the politicians' minds in Tallahassee. I'm not going to speak ill of them like my mama taught me. I won't say anything at all then. But I'm glad that you are concerned, and I would just look at our local representatives here from Manatee County and perhaps start writing to them. And those who are instrumental in creating the Jeffrey Johnston Stand Up for All Students Act and enacting that into law. I was trying to sit here while I'm talking and remember the senator's name. Mike Wise, Senator Wise, Stephen Wise, was instrumental in this process as well. Maybe he might be the catalyst that could get Tallahassee to listen in terms of adding climate to it. But keep on writing those folks, let them know what you mean, and you can maybe write a letter to the editor, start speaking or sparking that idea in the minds of other people. But if you know a kid, mentor a kid. Hold the expectations for that kid high up, whether it's your next door neighbor, your niece, your nephew, your own child. Let them know that you're watching and you have high expectations for their behavior and how they treat others with kindness and care. And I think that's the best thing that we all could do is model that. So, yeah.
There is one organization, and it's called GLSEN, and it's the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Educator Network, and they are doing policy work. So they might have some more information on policy, and their website is glsen.org. And for more information about my program, you can go to PRISM, PRISM, youth.org. And thanks for having us today.
Thank you.
We thank our speakers for their excellent program on this topic. I think we all have learned a lot today, and I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done to enlarge the public consciousness of this problem and of what needs to be done to correct it. Before we close today, I wanted to give Karen Patterson, our school board member, a chance to enlighten us about this a very important new project she started.
It's great to be here, and I really want to thank the speakers again because our schools and our service and our engagement of our youth will be only as good as the community involvement levels are. And I think we all need to reach out. When Skip talked about mentoring a young person, that's really one of the best things that you can do. Excuse me, also mentor a parent who might be having difficulty parenting a child. Last year, when we were looking at the board committees, I'm really concerned about the future, where we're taking Manatee schools in the future. And I convinced my fellow board members that we should have a new committee called Manatee 2020. This is really where we want to take the schools, regardless of what Tallahassee says or Washington, D.C. says, but where we want to take our schools and our educational services to young people by the year 2020. Some of you know I got a little sidetracked last year because I had a health issue. I'm back to good health, and we're getting this started, and we're going to be looking at best practices, activities like what's going on with the charter schools, where they're going to be, why they're successful, why some of them are not successful. We're going to be looking at mentoring, the impacts of nutrition on learning, technology, which will probably be several sessions because that's such a large issue. The format will be a 1-hour session at METV at 5:30, probably toward the end of the month, with a panel of guest experts on the topic, the subject matter of the day, and then with audience participation, people asking questions. And not only will this be an METV kind of co-sponsored activity, I'm hoping that the league would want to get involved in this. We'd love to have you feeding us ideas, talking about things that are of interest to you and interest in the community as we work to make our educational system better. There are some things going on that we're doing very well. There's some things that we need to improve. This whole notion of teaching to the test and measuring a child's response and ability just by one day and one test really doesn't do it. It's not promoting the joy of learning. So we need to start putting tests in their place where they are. And when we look at school climate, that's a very important issue, you know, and we need to speak up and speak to the policymakers, the people who think they know something about education up in Tallahassee, and advise them. So I'd encourage you to get involved with 2020. I'm looking for a large committee. We'll be convening a meeting the end of let's see, this is February, the end of February. Our first session will be on charter schools, the end of March, and that will tee off what Tiger Bay is doing on March 1st with their panel on charter schools, which are kind of the latest model of school delivery. So I'm pretty excited about this. I hope you will want to participate in this and be very inclusive as we wrap our arms around how we can do a better job in shaping our schools in the next 8 years.
Our next hot topic will be in March, on March the 12th, and we will be dealing with drug abusers in the justice system. It's going to be very interesting. We're going to have speakers from public defense, from drug court, and from treatment. So we hope to see you then.